authentic voice of Muslim nationalism. Its victory sharpened religious differences throughout North India. With the rising tension, the British government wanted to get out of India as soon as possible. Cripps returned with two other cabinet ministers to negotiate with the Indian leaders. Jinnah now showed, even at this late stage, that he was still far from committed to a total breakaway. On the 16th of May 1946, the mission published its plan. It proposed a system of government which would reassure Muslims by grouping the Muslim provinces into units with a large measure of autonomy, but still remaining inside a united India. It was the last chance of avoiding partition. Everything now depended on Jinnah. Would he agree to such a plan when it meant going back on the Pakistan demand?
This is, I think, one of the amazing things in history. Till May 1946, for the last 6 years, everybody was talking about a separate homeland and Pakistan. And then Quaid-e-Azam, in his wisdom, thought that, well, we can give another trial to a cabinet mission scheme because it was for a period of 10 years and we'll see how it works, which means temporarily going back on Pakistan. There was going to be a center. And when he announced, there was not one person who opposed this. They said, well, because Quaid-e-Azam has said it, so it must be the right thing to do.
I was the president then of the Muslim League in Sindh. We accepted that situation and said that if there are the safeguards, we would give up the idea of Pakistan and wait. If the safeguards which Mr. Jinnah had put forward were accepted, I think the masses would have accepted it.
But the British offer was torpedoed, not by Jinnah, but by Congress's President Nehru, who rejected outright the scheme for the grouping of Muslim provinces.
After Nehru's press conference in 1946, when he became the Congress president, replacing Azad, and he said, we will go in the Constituent Assembly unfettered. We will do what we want. And then Jinnah said, I can never trust these people. Even when they agree, they go back. And Sardar Patel described that on the part of Nehru as an act of emotional insanity. That was the most tragic moment in India's history.
Jinnah was finally pushed over the edge. It was the defining moment. He demanded a sovereign state of Pakistan and called a Muslim League Day of Action. In unleashing the power of the masses, he was for the first time turning his back on constitutional methods as well as a united India. In Calcutta, 5,000 people were killed.
And I saw for the first time what riot does to people. I saw a man, his throat cut. There was just this awful feeling of doom or of great disaster because people were being killed, which one had not thought would happen. And that was 1946. And that changed the whole of the complexion of the thing completely.
Reports of the massacres inspired Prime Minister Attlee to try one last time and get Congress and the League to agree to a settlement. But the time had passed when either Nehru or Jinnah would make concessions.
I am on my mission, and I can tell you nothing about the present. That's all I can say.
After the London conference, in a radio talk, Jinnah did say what he wanted, very clearly.
Hindu India and Muslim India must be separated because the two nations are entirely distinct and different and in some matters antagonistic to each other. Let me tell you some of the differences. History, culture, language, architecture, music, laws, jurisprudence, calendar, and our entire social fabric and code of life. One India is impossible realization. It will inevitably mean that the Muslim will be transferred from the domination of the British to the caste Hindu rule. But freedom must mean freedom both from the British exploitation and Hindu domination. 100 millions of Muslims will never agree merely to a change of masters.
In February 1947, Prime Minister Attlee announced the British would leave India by June the following year. With the end of British rule in sight, the Muslim League in Punjab stepped up its civil disobedience campaign. Sikhs and Hindus fought back.
And the violence was then started about March 1947. So it was really the entire Muslim population. Every day they would just come out on the streets, were beaten up, they were tear gassing. But the government realized that every day the gathering and the numbers were bigger than before. Starting from Lahore, they went to the other places like Amritsar, to Rawalpindi, to Jalandhar, all the other towns.
There was a danger of a complete collapse of the central authority. This was the danger of the situation. And the talk about there having been a scuttle and a rush at the end is simply the reverse of the truth. The truth is that it had gone on far too long. The whole discussion, the transfer of power had been under discussion with the same leaders for nearly 5 years.
In March 1947, the last Viceroy, Lord Louis Mountbatten, descended on India. The British and Congress had grudgingly accepted that India would have to be divided.
I think under the terms of reference that Mountbatten had, partition was inevitable. We were officially required to try and revive the Cabinet Mission Plan. But the Cabinet Mission Plan was a plan that involved a weak central government. And a weak central government was not going to be able to govern.
If Jinnah was to have his Pakistan, Mountbatten, whose sympathies lay with Nehru, was determined it should be as small as possible. Only those districts of Bengal and Punjab where the Muslims were in a majority would be included. Mountbatten feared that Jinnah would reject his plan for a truncated Pakistan. But time was not on Jinnah's side. He was now 70 and not in good health.
In point of fact, the actual decision to accept the plan was made on his behalf by Mountbatten. And all he did was to nod his head, which is all he had to do. He didn't nod his head the wrong way. He nodded it in a nodding of acceptance, and that was in fact the actual token agreement which made possible the June the 3rd plan to be announced and the Government of India Act to be passed and all the rest of the transaction.
We must remember that we have to take momentous decisions and handle grave issues facing us in the solution of the complex political problem of this great subcontinent inhabited by 400 millions of people.
I was in Bombay, my house, and he phoned and he said, "We've got it." I said, "Got it? You know, what's?" And he said, "Pakistan." I said, "Well, you've worked hard for it." And we had personal conversations, and that was it.
On the 7th of August 1947, Jinnah arrived in Karachi, his new capital. He was greeted by thousands of Muslims shouting, "Pakistan Zindabad! Long live Pakistan!" The world's biggest Muslim state as yet had no government. Jinnah's first task was to build an administration out of the chaos he found in Karachi. But the strain showed, and by the time he was sworn in as Pakistan's first head of state, he was an exhausted man. On August 13th, 1947, the last Viceroy of India, Lord Louis Mountbatten, swept into Karachi for a celebratory banquet. It was hosted by Muhammad Ali Jinnah.
I got this amazing sense of his power, of the potency of the man. Here is Pakistan's King Emperor, Archbishop of Canterbury, Prime Minister, Speaker, all rolled into one formidable Qaid-e-Azam.
Qaid-e-Azam, meaning great leader, was the title Jinnah's followers had given him. Yet at this moment of his greatest triumph, he seemed strangely aloof.
I was responsible for the bodyguard. Mountbatten